Hello, everyone. I'm Rose Gerber, COA's Director of Patient Advocacy and Education. Thank you for being with us today. And for those of you that joined our recent virtual advocacy summit, an extra thank you to you. For those of you that did participate in our virtual summit, the recorded sessions, which are always popular and you all request, were sent to your email last week. If you haven't seen them, remember that little pesky junk folder to please check there. During our virtual summit, we had a session titled Federal Cancer Care Policy Updates from Capitol Hill, which was led by Ted Ocon and two of our CPAN medical co-chairs, or our two CPAN medical co-chairs, Dr. Valles from Cancer Center of Middle Georgia and Dr. Miriam Atkins from Augusta Oncology. One of the focal points during that session was a 340B drug discount program. It was a very informative session, and a few comments really stood out to me and possibly to you as well, which I will now share. During this session, Ted Ocon encouraged everyone to Google a recent New York Times article on what is happening with 340B hospitals as it relates to patients, and it is really shocking. Dr. Atkins then provided examples of what these 340B abuses mean to patients in real time. And one of the most negative consequences is the higher that the bill is for insurers, that means the higher the bill is for cancer patients. And as we all know, the last thing any cancer patient needs is more stressful situations like having to deal with higher copays. Dr. V has also mentioned his frustration, which is shared by many community oncologists, that the patients that are the most deserving of affordable care and the communities that are the most deserving of affordable care are not receiving it. The combined comments of these three experts and their insight reveal the fact that though the 340B drug discount program was created to serve patients and communities in need, this is not at all what is happening. And that, as we all know, is just plain wrong. To elaborate and educate us further on this topic are today's guests, COA Executive Director Ted Ocon and Nick Ferreros, COA's Managing Director of Policy, Advocacy, and Communications. Welcome, Ted and Nick. And one quick thing before I should have said this before the welcome, is we know that you're going to have questions for Ted and Nick. Please feel free to put those in the chat or the text, and we will do our best to respond to them. If not, we may respond after. I know that you all will request these slides, and they will also be available to you. So please feel free to reach out. So again, you can go ahead, Ted. Go and take it.
Thank you, Rose. What we're going to do is Nick and I are going to double team this. I'm going to go through a number of slides, hand it over to him, and we'll try to save a couple minutes at the end of questions. I'm going to tell you right now that we're violating every presentation 101. There are more slides than are possible. So we're not going to go through every word on the slide. We're going to give you the high points. And then, as Rose said, the slides are going to be made available. Next slide, Rose. Right off the start. And this is why it's in red and it's in bolded. 340B is a critical safety net program, especially for patients with cancer who are underinsured or uninsured or underinsured. I want to make that clear because the bottom line is we get misquoted. I get misquoted. The 340B advocates say COA is out to destroy the program. They're doing pharma's work. Not true. But this is a program, as we will tell you in the next 25 minutes, that's really out of control when it gets to the big health systems and it's being abused. It provides up to 60% of drug discounts to health organizations that are supposed to treat high number of poor, indigent, and uninsured patients. And just so you understand the 340B program in the background, it's not just hospitals, but it's community health centers, hemophilia, black lung clinics, AIDS clinics, nonprofit hospitals. The bottom line is there are a number of entities that avail themselves of 340B discounts, but we're going to separate those entities and really concentrate on the hospital side. This is a program that is hurting the cancer care system. It's causing us a lot of money. When I say us, I mean the Medicare program. It's costing basically commercial payers, taxpayers, and most of all, patients. This is a problem with big hospitals. This is often said, oh, this is pharma. Pharma is giving these drugs away. The only one it hurts is pharma, and they're giving all these discounts. That is not true. This is a program that has become a virtual multi-billion-dollar printing press for, for hospitals. And you have to understand that when this program was created in 1992, it's expanded from literally what was a handful of safety net providers, because this program started a year after Medicaid best price, and literally pharmaceutical voluntary discounts dried up. Why? Because they had to give Medicaid best price. So Congress was afraid that there were Americans who would fall through the cracks, not be eligible for Medicaid and discounts on drugs under Medicaid and best price, but would literally fall through the cracks. They created this Section 340B of the Public Health Service Act. So today, you have literally 14% of the entire pharmaceutical market. This is a market that's also dominated by generics. So this is a big deal when you say 14% of the market. Is that one estimate is that it will be by 2026 the largest federal program, surpassing both Medicare and Medicaid. And it's generated $40 billion for the participants. But you have to ask the question, are patients truly benefiting? So where did it go bad? It went bad of big hospital greed. So you have some big hospitals and health systems that realized they could make huge profits from 340B. So they buy these discount drugs that they get 50, 60%, in some cases, discounts of larger, and then basically, in essence, selling them to insured patients at not just full price, but as we're going to show you in a minute, huge markups. Unlike the federal grantees, so those are the community health centers, those are the Ryan White AIDS clinics, the hemophilia, all of those entities that are held to a level of transparency and accountability, hospitals do not have to account how they use the discounts or if they actually benefit patients. It is a black hole. It is a black hole. We know for a fact, we've heard 340B dollars discounts going to CEO bonuses, putting pianos in grand pianos in hospital lobbies, building new buildings. But this is a basic problem because there is a lack of transparency and accountability, and it's caused the program to explode in size. And I'm going to actually tell you at the end how now the Pbms of for-profit corporations are involved. So there's a double standard, as I said. You look at the community health centers and the other federal grantees, as I just said, and they are held to a level of transparency and accountability, literally required to show where and how these discounts are being used. The hospitals, there is absolutely no shred of transparency and accountability. They do not have to show anything. So that's why we're really focused on the fact that it's the hospitals where you see the abuse as opposed to the federal grantees. Next slide, Nick. So it's exploding inside and it keeps on growing. Look at this 217% growth over the last 5 years. What this slide to the right shows from Drug Channels does a great job of doing of literally quantifying the growth of 340B. Is the light blue bars are basically the growth of the program at the discounted prices. But if you say if the prices weren't discounted, what would they actually be? They would be close to $100 million in terms of $100 billion in terms of discounts. That's what the blue bars are. Next slide, please. So, with 340B today, hospitals win and patients lose. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Nick, and you take it from there.
Thanks, Ted. Piggybacking off that last slide Ted just talked about, the program's grown. But I don't think anybody who's gone to a hospital for cancer care can say that their care has gone down. So all these discounted drugs going through the system, hospitals saving billions, but cancer care costs are not being reduced. We're just going to do a few slides on how patients are actually impacted by 340B and show you the results of the study we put out a month or so ago. One of the things that's very clear is, the patients are not benefiting directly or even indirectly from 340B. Costs are not going down, access is not going up. You'll see a story that was covered in the New York Times recently that Ted talked about during the Advocacy Summit of a hospital getting 340B discounts, but actually using it not to benefit the patients that needed it, the uninsured, underinsured, poor patients, but actually directing it to facilities in fully insured, higher income areas. And at the same time as this is happening, charity care, which is percentage of care given in hospitals that's charitable, is actually going down. And I'll show you some stats on that. Meanwhile, hospitals are getting these discounts at these drugs at huge discounts, and then marking them up to 5 times is what we found in one of our studies. This is not just the hospitals making money off of the drugs, but also then patients who have cost sharing that comes from their insurance are finding higher out-of-pocket expenses. Again, how are the patients benefiting from this discount program? And then, with all these monies, with all these profits that they're able to generate from it, they use these funds to acquire their competition in the markets and then buy up so they can dominate service lines. Oncology is a very lucrative one because the drugs are so pricey, they can mark them up on a percentage basis. That means it's a lot of money to be made when a hospital buys a cancer practice. Of course, COA represents independent, non-hospital-based community oncology providers. And our members are often under pressure from 340B hospitals because they see how much money they can make by acquiring them. And so that, that causes access problems. First off, your provider of choice may no longer be accessible or available to you. But then if you're in a rural area where the hospital does the number crunching and realizes that it's not worth their time to have a clinic based there, suddenly you have to travel. We've heard stories of patients having to travel miles and hours to get their care when they used to be able to just get it close to home or where they worked. And then of course, there is no free lunch. Every discount, every penny that somebody extracts from the system, somebody else tries to make up for it. We do not let pharma off the hook at COA. Drug prices are too high. Something needs to be done about that. But there is no free lunch. These discounts are priced into the price of the drugs after a while. And if hospitals are making billions and billions of dollars off of this program, those billions of dollars are going to be made up for on the balance sheets by higher prices. First thing I mentioned, lack of charity care. As the program has grown, we've seen actually hospitals, the percentage of charity care going down. Also, it should be noted that over the growth of this program has been the same time as the Affordable Care Act passed, Medicaid expansion has passed in states. So people are better insured, there is more insurance, and yet these hospitals are getting greater and greater discounts on these drugs with a better insured patient base and pocketing the differences. So why are hospitals receiving the discounts if they aren't providing a high level of charity care? This stat here shows that only 24% of hospitals accounted for 80% of the care, for 80% of the total charity care. So that means that 76% of hospitals are not providing the majority of charity care in 340B, but are receiving these discounts. Here's another study. This one's actually just, I think, a week ago, right, Ted?
Yeah.
Showing all of it's not just an interaction between a drug company and a hospital and a patient, but there's a lot of people in the middle. Every business has business consultants that can pop up here. And there are a lot of very lucrative companies and consultants in the middle of 340B that are making percentages here. And so what this study showed also is that patients are not benefiting directly from the 340B discounts. Again, it's a message that we keep saying over and over again, but it is unfortunately the fact. And I talked about practices being acquired. This is COA's last practice impact report, where we looked at hospitals that are closed or struggling financially or merged and acquired by practices that are acquired by hospitals. And you can see all over the country. This, sometimes it looks like a Verizon map, but really it's our practice impact map. And that blue chart there with that line going all the way up, that's tracking hospitals acquiring independent oncology practices. And that's over the last 10 years. And that is a direct correlation with the growth of the explosion of the 340B program. So in lots of rural communities, if you find your community oncology practice is closed and disappeared, there's a very good chance that a 340B hospital has found it lucrative enough to acquire somebody in that market and either them directly or just push them out of business. if you have not had a chance, Google New York Times 340B, and you will see this fantastic series of stories that came out of the New York Times 2 weeks ago. And they looked at Bon Secours Hospital in Virginia. And this quote says it all. Bon Secours was basically laundering money through this poor hospital that had 340B discounts to its wealthy outposts. It was all about profits. This tells you the story of how a hospital chain used its location in a poor neighborhood to get 340B discounts, took those profits and funneled them into its wealthier hospital chains. And the reason being that in the wealthier chains, they could bill an insured patient the full price for the drugs. That, of course, has erupted a firestorm. Lots of people are looking into it. If your local hospital seems to be involved in this game, you may not be surprised to see more coverage of this in the future, because this is an issue now that we are seeing a lot of people talk about. And why is that? This is sort of the background of how that story got started. This is a study that COA did about a month ago, where we looked at how much hospitals are marking up their oncology drugs and then selling it to their fully insured patients. So chances are, if you have insurance and are employed, you have what's called employer-sponsored insurance or commercial insurance. This study looked at how much hospitals are marking up the drugs for different types of insured people. But if you're an insured patient, your drugs are being marked up enormously, up to 5 times as much. Although that's the exception here. You look at the story. If you're a Medicare patient in a hospital, a community practice might make about $4,000 on one drug, on administering a drug. A Medicare patient at a 340B hospital, about $26,000, which is already a huge markup, it should be noted. But if you're a commercial patient, you're making a margin of about $173,000 on those drugs. So commercially insured patients, those with private insurance, and the employers who are sponsoring that insurance are footing the bill for these 340B markups off of their discounted cost. One of the biggest findings from our report, of course, going back to the whole purpose of this entire program, right, is to provide, to stretch resources for uninsured or underinsured patients and ensure they have access to care. One of our top findings was that cash paying or uninsured patients do not receive the discounted price on their drugs. And that is shocking when you think about the purpose of this program and what it is supposed to do. Ted, I'll let you cover the PBM angle here.
Yeah, and let me just say, and I'll knock off one of the questions, is that Betty asked the question, is the 340B a safety net program or supposed to be a safety net program? Yes, it is. And here's the problem. The problem is that when you have, when you argue that basically patients in need who are uninsured or underinsured are not getting the discounts, you will have the 340B advocates and the big hospitals saying, oh, but this isn't about drugs, it's about the community in general. But then Nick shared with you, as 340B has grown at an astronomical rate, charity care is actually going down. So whatever way you cut it, whether you talk about drugs specifically or talk about the idea that 340B discounts are supposed to fund NICU units and other breast cancer screenings and things like that, there's just absolutely no data on that. In fact, the data shows that charity care is going down. So the problem is, and there was an anonymous question, is that it seems like PBMs operate in a very similar fashion. Well, PBMs have found the 340B program. So what this shows you is that basically the top 3 PBM non-retail pharmacies now account for 18% of 340B pharmacy relationships. So what I mean by that, Walgreens has a lot of physical stores out there. So they operate as what's called a contract pharmacy to the main hospital system. CVS has a lot of stores out there. So that's why you see the big sort of orange taupey color bars, basically that are the number of relationships, but also the big blue bars that represent the contract pharmacy location. So you have multiple relationships through one contract pharmacy. Actually, the same is true with Walmart is in the game. But look at Express Scripts and OptumRx. So just so you know, the three biggest PBMs are CVS, Express Scripts, and OptumRx. CVS owns Aetna. Express Scripts is owned by Cigna. OptumRx is owned by United Healthcare. And look at, you see hardly any very small blue bars. Why? Because they use their locations that are their mail locations, not a physical location, a mail location where they mail out multiple states basically as the contract pharmacy. And that is really disconcerting. So the PBMs have learned now that they can make money off of 340B. And certainly this was a program never intended to have for-profit corporations. CVS is the fourth largest corporation in this country, basically make money off of 340B. Next slide, Nick. And the profits that they're making are unbelievable. So what you see is a slide here on the left that shows you the total estimated gross profits from 340B going from 2021 and look at a literary projection of 2022. And then basically seeing what you see in terms of the right slide is the distribution channel that's grown so much is the mail. So that means that you have a CVS and Express Scripts and Optum that has a mail service pharmacy, can be a contract pharmacy, get the discounts through that contract pharmacy, and mail out the drugs, not just even oral drugs, but literally mail out the injectable drugs to a practice, which is something called white bagging. This is astronomical in terms of what's happening. Next slide, Nick. So, what's the implication of the PBM's intrusion in 340B? You ask yourselves why insurers and their PBMs want to white bag these injectables or fill orders through their because they're 340B contract pharmacies and there's no oversight. And, the problem is, ultimately, I always say this to the docs, the PBM insurer complex wants to control what treatment is provided and who provides it and where. This is actually a line out of one of these that talks about clinical oversight. So, where do you want to go get care? Do you want to get care from your physician and get your cancer treated there? Or do you want to get your cancer treated literally by an insurer or PBM? Next slide, Nick. So with today, hospitals win and patients lose. That's what's important to understand. They don't seem to be benefiting it. You're not talking about charity care, which is decreasing. They aren't getting the discounts. They aren't getting the discounts at most contract pharmacies. There was just an article out the other day looking at the fact that patients don't appear to get contract pharmacy discounts. Patients are paying excessive amounts for cancer drugs at 340B hospitals. This is just feeding the beast. So imagine going in and having a $5,000 cancer drug, which basically the hospital is charging the patient, whether they have insurance or not, $25,000. This is just excessive. And they are motivated to acquire oncology practices. And Nick said, this creates access problems. So, when you hear literally about all of this, the 340B advocates saying, oh, this is just pharma giving away discounts. It's not. This is about patients who are being impacted in terms of the cost to them, their access to care. And again, this is even fueling prices. Look, I'm not defending, Nick said it, pharmaceutical prices are too high, but the bottom line is this is fueling it higher when companies know that they have to give out more and more discounts and larger discounts to patients. So this is really something that's really interesting. And next slide, Nick, too. So there was a question about, from Suzanne, is there a location, a website where we can see the requirements to qualify? It's very simple. You have to be a DISH hospital. To be a DISH hospital in today's day and age, you have to hit a mark of 11.75% in terms of the amount of indigent care. Ironically enough, it's not really based on out-care. It's based on inpatient and Medicare care. Once you're a DISH hospital, you can apply for 340B. You can go on the website for the CMS website and get stuff there. And I had a question from What's the margin for community practice and non-340B commercial patient and Herceptin example? Well, we showed that operating margin, and remember, that's not like some profit that gets banked. That's literally a margin that has to go pay for staff and facility and infrastructure. And so the bottom line is, if you look at that, you know, Nick showed it that it's almost $4,000 operating margin if you're a community practice or a hospital that doesn't have 340B and you treat a Medicare patient. If you're a 340B hospital treating a Medicare patient, it's almost $27,000 in operating margin. And a commercial patient, it explodes. And remember, virtually for a commercial patient and a patient who's cash paying, it's the same. And
don't forget, Ted, too, you know, that $173,000 is a cost that goes into your health insurance premiums. So this year, when you're in open enrollment and your costs are going up, that hospital that made $173,000 on that exact same drug, that exact same treatment as a community oncology practice that only made $4, that gets calculated into how much you and your family are paying for healthcare, how much your small business is paying for healthcare. So ask yourself, I mean, hospitals have a serve a purpose in our world, in our healthcare system. They're absolutely important, and especially safety net hospitals that are doing this right. But those hospitals that are minting money off of this program, not passing on the lower cost to patients, you are paying that. That's why we say patients are the ones that are stuck with the cost.
Yeah, and you know, I have to tell you, David put up a question, and maybe he was a little late to this, to say there are many eligible entities aside from hospitals in the Ryan White universe. Your comments are simply not true on many points. Totally agree. We're not talking about literally those entities, the Ryan White, the hemophilia, AIDS, FQHCs. This is not the problem. They are not the problem. They're doing it right. There's transparency. There's accountability required to show those discounts. The problem is these large hospital systems. And trust me, this New York Times article in Richmond has created a firestorm. And the article that came out the next day on the Providence system and aggressively going after debt collection, as I told the authors, the one thing that they didn't mention is that the Providence system has hundreds of 340B facilities. So they are going after. But David, this is not about the grantees. They're doing it right. And David said he was 10 minutes late. So that slide is for you, David. This is not, if you're associated with that in any way, shape, or form, not the problem. It's hospitals. And I told literally some of the federal grantees who have reached out to me even recently about this. I said, you are going to get dragged under, because, you know, when Congress enacts legislation, the pendulum goes like this. And we are very adamant about not touching the federal grantees. This is a hospital problem. So one other thing, John brought up a question. I saw that basically that there are, you know, that there are problems with on the Medicaid, the managed care programs, taking advantage of 340B. Yes, that's a big growing problem. There's a lot of double dipping that goes on in terms of there, and that just fires it up. So that's a problem. And last but not least, sorry, Nick, I'm just running through these rapidly. Ann said, don't the hospitals negotiate their fee schedule with the insurers, and the insurers giving into outrageous demands? I think, Ann, that actually the insurers are giving in. And I think there's some speculation in some cases because their contracts are written such a way that they may actually be benefiting if the drugs are high. But the problem is the employers are higher than the insurers, are really getting a dose now of knowing that they are way overpaying for these drugs. So I know, Rose, I'll hand it back to you. I know we've run out of time, but these slides will be available. And I think everybody knows how to reach me and Nick. So if you have some questions, if you have anything you want to know, holler. Rose?
Thank you, Ted, Nick. Excellent job. And I think you can see, well, not everyone in the audience can see this, but we talk about transparency and we also try to live by it, because we did get a little challenging question there, but Ted quickly addressed that. So we always try to bring you the full picture. And thank you for being such an engaged audience today. We did get a lot of questions. Unfortunately, because this is a 30-minute, we can't address them all, but we will be sharing the slides with you. Again, thank you for participating. We always try to educate you during this quick 30 minutes. And our next advocacy chat is going to be on Wednesday, November 9th, and we have a very unique topic for you that is specifically related to patients. So it's something that will hopefully spark your interest to join us, and it's about cancer rehabilitation. And we're always trying to find topics that meet everyone and meet the needs of everyone in our audience. And this is for patients, but this can be patients at the beginning of the care or long-term survivors, or even patients who might be in the end stages of life. But we're going to learn a lot about what our community oncologists are doing on this topic about cancer rehabilitation. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we are very grateful for you for always being with us. Thank you, Nick and Ted.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.